Welcome to the Central European Institute for Art History and to Budapest and to the second event of the Resonances project, Beyond Friendships, Regional Transfer in the Art of Eastern Europe in the 70s. Thanks for coming, and the program will start with the introduction and welcome of Dávid Fehér, the director of the Central European Research Institute for Art History. Probably most of you know him very well, but just briefly, what is important about him, that he's a researcher of László Lochner. He wrote his PhD about his oeuvre, and right now he is organizing an exhibition, a retrospective of László Lochner, which is happening in Debrecen. And he also published important essays on pop art, photorealism, and was a contributor of such important volumes as Art in Hungary, Doublespeak and Beyond, or Promote, Tolerate, and Ban. So I wouldn't detail it more so that we can keep the schedule. So I give over the floor to Dávid to introduce our project and also where we are here, because as most of you know, this is a new institution that you might be interested to learn a bit about.
Thank you. I think I come. Thank you very much. It is a very, very big and great pleasure to be here and to introduce this first event of CAMKI, first international event of CAMKI. It is a great pleasure and honor to welcome you at the Central European Research Institute for Art History in our first international conference titled Beyond Friendships, focusing on cultural transfer in the art of the 1970s East Central Europe. This conference is in the same time the debut of our institution. The Central European Research Institute for Art History, CAMKI shortly, was founded in 2021 as a member institution of the Museum of Fine Arts Budapest and incorporates 3 departments: Art Pool Art Research Center, the Research Department, and the Archive and Documentation Center. CAMKI initiates and implements long-term research projects focusing on 20th century and contemporary art of East Central Europe and that are based on regional and international cooperation. Our Archive and Documentation Center, formed of the former archival departments of the Museum of Fine Arts and the Hungarian National Gallery, holds the largest archive of Hungarian art, predominantly manuscripts, documents, and archive photos from the 19th to the 21st century, including the complete archive of the former Lectorate of Fine and Applied Arts that consists of documents and of state commissions, exhibition juries, and further issues of the official institutional system of Cold War Hungary. ArtPool was founded as an underground initiative and documents, collects, and catalyzes artistic projects that were beyond this official institutional system. It became one of the most important archives in the East Central European region, as you may all know, for documents and works of neo-avant-garde artists and a wide range of experimental tendencies, artist books, artist stamps, mail art, visual pottery, conceptual art, performance art, and so on. The collections of CAMKI thus enable us to provide a complex overview of the Hungarian art scene's different spheres and their international context. Our research department deals with the introduction of large-scale, regionally focused international research projects, accompanied by international conferences, workshops, the publication of volumes containing academic essays, and the curation of complex museum exhibitions. Among our plans are a research project focusing on the art of the 1980s. Another project, which we plan to realize in cooperation with Kossuth Museum, will focus on the historical avant-garde and will start with a conference convened by the European Society for Periodical Research, the ESPRI, that reflects on how periodicals challenge, transform, or interpret the notion of centers and peripheries in a context of permanently shifting and historically unstable situations. Our forthcoming conference, which will be partly held here in this building, Art of the Holocaust Until 1989, Beyond an East-West Divide, organized in cooperation with Central European University, so the CEU, realizing the concept of Daniel Beeri and Agata Pietrasik, will take place between the 8th and 10th of June here. So if you want to come, you're warmly welcome. In addition to collecting, conserving, and researching, one of our main ambitions is to play a proactive role in the current discourses surrounding art. Given this, one of our central objectives is to combine and merge the three departments' tasks and strategies and become thus a decisive and active participant in the Hungarian and international cultural scene. Our aim is to combine the activities traditionally connected to the notion of public collecting with the concept of the active archive, a term originating from the legacy of Art Pool, to explore art historical phenomena in dialogue and context with the tendencies of contemporary art. It is a great pleasure to introduce this conference, which is among Kemki's and Art Pool's most important recent projects, organized by Emese Kürti and Zsuzsa László, with the assistance of Zsófia Kókai and Vanda Pál, and the whole team of Art Pool, and I would like to express my gratitude to all of them. Our conference is the second chapter of the four-part series organized in the framework of Resonances, regional and trans-regional cultural transfer in the art of the 1980s, which is a long-term research project that is realized in cooperation with Andrea Euringer-Bátorova, Department of Art History, Comenius University, Bratislava, Pavlina Morganova, Luisa Kotočová, Dagmar Svatosova from the Academic Research Center of the Academy of Fine Arts, Prague, Hanna Budeus from the Academy of Sciences of the Czech Republic, Institute of Art History, and Magdalena Radomska from the Piotr Piotrowski Center for Research on East Central Europe at the Adam Mickiewicz University, Poznan. Resonances is co-financed by the governments of Czechia, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia through Visegrad grants from the International Visegrad Fund. The mission of the fund is to advance ideas for sustainable regional cooperation in Central Europe. Resonances is a collaborative research project running from 2021 to 2024, first taking form of a traveling four-chapter conference that was started in Bratislava as an online event, now happens in Budapest and later continues in Prague and Poznan. The initial idea of Resonances originates from Andrea Euringer-Bátorova and inspired by Ljubomír Gyurcsak's concept of resonances from 1979, which he developed further during the Alternative Festival, the Week of Street Theatre in Bratislava. In Gyurcsak's work, the spatial arrangements of people evoked constellations that created psychological and social situations. In the focus of our project are such social situations, interpersonal and intercultural dialogues and exchanges. We explore cultural transfers between artists, art professionals, and intellectuals of the region in the 1970s to compose a new transnational and dialogical history for neo-avant-garde art of East Central Europe. Resonances applies theories of cultural transfer, histoire croisée, cultural translation and circulation to the field of East Central European art, aiming to question the hierarchical one-way concept of influence and to create a more complex polyphonic narrative, a horizontal approach of art history in the sense of Piotr Piotrowski that is based on the network of relationships and exchanges. We intend to rethink the schematic dichotomies of Eastern and Western official and non-official art through focusing on transnational cultural transfers as case studies. Each chapter of this conference series approaches cultural transfer from a different angle. Starting in Bratislava, most of you have participated on that, in Bratislava from the critical evaluation of networks and communication channels. Here in Budapest, we move on to test the applicability of various theories of cultural transfer and translation in uncovering the interconnections between state-governed cultural diplomacy between the so-called friendly countries and the self-organized exchanges. The third colloquium in Prague will elaborate further the role of exhibitions in cultural transfer. The fourth chapter in Poznan expands our field of discussion to trans-regional contacts and examines dialogues and exchanges between artists and art professionals in Latin America and East Central Europe. The project thus aims to extend the focus on Visegrad countries, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, in a southeastern direction to include contacts with non-aligned states such as Romania and the former Yugoslavia, as well as Latin America. The title of today's conference is Beyond Friendships, Regional Cultural Transfer in the Art of the 1970s. Central European Research Institute for Art History, which includes Central Europe in its name, as I've mentioned earlier, includes archives of both underground and state-run institutions, which were part of different but overlapping international networks. Our institution considers its responsibility to open a transnational discourse on current and yet to be developed approaches to regional art histories. As a reflection on this extraordinary constellation, the conference will approach cultural transfer as a process that transcends the familiar dichotomy of official and non-official. The conference will also reflect on Hungary's special situation in the region, a status complicated by historical conflicts, transborder minorities, and linguistic isolation. The conference program, created by Emese Kürti and Zsuzsa László, is composed of 5 sections that investigate different scales of transfers and translations. The first panel, which will come very soon, Theories of Translation and Transfer, will examine how the concept of cultural transfer and translation may be applied to write art histories transcending the boundaries of national cultures, and what specificities, cultural differences, or epistemologies can constitute joint histories of the former friendly states of Eastern Europe. In the second section, titled Interpersonal Friendships and Dialogues, speakers will present actual cross-border friendships as microsites for cultural transfer and translation. The last section of this first day, Hubs of Transfer, will discuss unique multi-ethnic, interdisciplinary, and collaborative milieus in between zones that facilitated transfers between different languages, ideological discourses, and localities. On the second day of the conference, panel 4, titled Agents, Vectors, Mediators, will focus on transnational protagonists who imported, exported, and translated various artistic concepts between different languages and localities, and as such also negotiated transnational interpretations of East Central European art. Finally, in the section Institutions of Friendship, speakers will highlight the role of art galleries, institutions, and international exhibitions played in connecting and confronting various local idioms of art. A small display will also accompany our conference in the exhibition space of Artpool in the building next to us. The exhibition is based on Artpool's collection and focuses on artworks and documents that reflect productive transnational dialogues between East Central European artists. The works address the difficulties of communication, semiotic and linguistic issues that imply questions related to cultural translation, including works and documents of such artists as Gábor Attalai, Tibor Csiki, Katalin Ladik, Dóra Maurer, Sándor Pincei, Jiří Valoch, Jaroslav Kozlovsky, and others. The works evoke questions related to transnational communication. What motivations and urges lie behind Gábor Attalai's ambivalent request, "Try to forget your mother language," which can be read in Attalai's artist book titled Without Instruments. Attalai belonged to the most important networkers of the 1970s Hungary, who established relationships within and beyond the Iron Curtain through communication. The deconstruction of geographic relations and the transfer between surfaces, cultures, and contexts became the most important themes of his art. I just show here a postcard sent to László Becker and a work which is a good example how he deconstructed geographical relations through transferring Sweden to a more sunny place, to southern Europe, and one of the envelopes and letters Attalai received from the many, this one from Christo and Jean-Claude. Laszlo Lackner's Wittgenstein citation from 1971 belongs to the most emblematic works of the display. Lackner quotes the famous closing line of Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus: "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." He presents the sentence in Hungarian, English, German, and French, in some versions, like here, also in Polish languages, separated by the boundaries of vertical lines, examining the existential experience of being enclosed into language as both a philosophical and a political issue, highlighting the fact that some boundaries can prove to be impassable. The Wittgenstein citation was first on show in 1972 at the Vauxhall Gallery, Warsaw, in the frames of an exhibition that showcased central figures of the Hungarian neo-avant-garde: Endre Tóth, Gyula Pauer, Miklós Erdély, Tamás Szentjobbik, György Jovanovic, and Laszlo Lackner. The exhibition itself became the medium of cultural translation and transfer within the Eastern Bloc. In the work of Lackner and his contemporaries, the play with languages and translations was both a theoretical and a political issue. The most important partner in these theoretical and political games of languages, translations, and networks was art historian Laszlo Becker, who not only interpreted, but also catalyzed many transnational events and projects. Our conference is dedicated to the memory of Laszlo Becker, our friend, teacher, and research subject. And I would like to warmly welcome Zsuzsa Varga, the wife, the widow of Laszlo Becker, in our conference. I'm sure Laszlo would be also here in the first line somewhere. I hope our conference will enable us to continue the transnational dialogues and discourses initiated by him. These dialogues are now more important than ever. In the middle of a brutal war and a big crisis, experiencing the inexpressible tragedies and suffering of our Ukrainian neighbors. In this context, transnational dialogues appear to me as fragile metaphors of hope. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very productive conference. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And